We've got kind of a big day today. Today's Saturday, April 5th, so I'm 16 days out from Boston. And it's been about a month since I've tried to do anything remotely fast. I've been struggling with some hamstring issues and really just wanted to give a big chunk of time and try to give my hamstrings a chance to recover, or my hamstring, my left one. I likely had a tear in my left hamstring, and I really aggravated it when I was doing some downhill training. I was trying to run at my marathon effort on the downhills, and which had me going about, I think it was like 5:08 pace, give or take. And from a cardiovascular perspective, that felt pretty easy. But clearly my muscles weren't quite ready for that. They weren't strong enough for that. So anyways, I hurt them probably like 7 weeks ago, and then re-aggravated it about a month ago. And so I've been given it from then until now to try to get things recouped. I've continued to put the time in. At first, just, primarily doing the uphill running, kind of setting the treadmill to 15 degrees, and then just going a nice slow pace. But at 15 degrees, even a slow pace is, it's pretty taxing cardiovascular wise. So it hasn't been a month since I've worked hard. But it has been a month since, my legs have tried to turn over at marathon pace. So I'm going to attempt that today. Tentative goal is to try to get 12 miles in, and we'll see what that's like. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to adjust my goal a little bit. So I'm going to try these at about, 5:36 pace or so, which, that doesn't get me my 226, but trying to be realistic and smart about this. And, who knows? We'll see what happens in this workout. I think this will be telling. I'm actually a little bit nervous to see how this actually goes. Because it will definitely dictate, what my plans are for the actual race for Boston. And usually I'm pretty good about going through the half at my goal pace. And I think a big part of that is setting realistic goals. And, I think in the past, I've been a little bit on the optimistic side about what my goal should be. And I sort of have gone through the half with that goal pace in mind. And kind of given the nature of how things have gone the last couple of months, just want to be smart about reevaluating that and to get the most out of this marathon as I possibly can, given the prep. And so, anyways, we'll see how this goes. I'm really not too sure. I've made some tweaks to my stride a little bit as well, which has definitely put some more strain on my calves. I've kind of shortened my stride a little bit. Tried to tilt my hips a little bit more. I have a tendency to run in a squat position, especially when I'm tired, which I think, transfers some extra strain on the hamstrings. And then also, I tend to run, at a slightly lower cadence than ideal. So trying to keep my landing underneath my knees, as opposed to big kind of loopy strides, which can have a bit of a jarring effect. So, I'm not a huge fan of making these kind of tweaks this close, but I have been doing it for a few weeks now. My calves are starting to get used to it, but they certainly haven't tried, to try doing it at marathon pace. So we'll see. The good news is my marathon pace usually does have me up on my toes. So I'm actually hopeful that this extra month of, more toe striking might help out with the marathon, because, most of my easy runs in years past, I've been more of a heel striker. And then when I get down to marathon pace, I become more of a forefoot or midfoot striker. So lately I've been trying to have all of my running to be happening with the midfoot or forefoot striking. And so we'll see how things adapt on that. So yeah, the plan here, gonna give 12 miles a try. Try it at 5:36 pace. I'm not gonna mess around too much with the incline. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. I've been doing a 4-mile warm up here, and I'll probably do a couple mile cool down afterwards. We'll see how things feel. But this will likely be my kind of the last hurrah in terms of, anything too long and hard. And like I said, it'll definitely dictate what my pre-race goals are. I think a couple of months ago when I first started this video series, I described, trying to run 220, 226-ish. And I'm trying to block that out a little bit, even though I kind of socially put myself out there. I also want to be smart about not being stupid about biting off more than I can chew in the race. So, I feel like my cardiovascular has typically not been my bottleneck. It has almost always been my legs' ability to handle the pounding. So I'm not sure exactly where that will be, but anyways, this will be, I think, a decent indicator of how that will all play out. I think this is one of the bigger unknowns for me in terms of how things will go. Certainly everybody deals with some injuries or minor injuries, and I wouldn't put this on the spectrum of a major injury. Obviously, if I can attempt this kind of a workout, then there's a lot of people who are a lot worse off in terms of trying to get to the start line. But this definitely hasn't been ideal. But I think especially as you get older, and if you're pushing the limits at all, I don't know. Like I've talked about before, I don't know how often you are going to get through a full cycle without having any issues. And so, this one I think has been a bigger issue than in the past, but hopefully it hasn't been something that hasn't, totally killed things. And I'm still pretty excited about what I can do at Boston in a few weeks. And can't wait to soak in the atmosphere, and pretty pumped that, I still feel pretty confident in my ability to run under 230, which, in the grand scheme of things, for someone who's 47 or any age, to be fortunate enough to be able to to at least think I can go into the race doing that is pretty awesome. And so that perspective hasn't been lost on me. Hopefully I can be well under 2:30, but we'll see. I think I'll probably know a lot more in an hour and a half. All right, so I'm off here. This is 5:36 pace right now. Feels okay. No immediate pain in the hamstring, so that's a good sign. I did a couple of strides at this pace before I started, and so I knew it kind of felt okay. But yeah, we'll see how it goes in another hour or so. I'm gonna try doing a gel in the first half mile here. Typically that's how I start a marathon. Usually at like the half mile mark or so. Once you're kind of out of the craziness of the crowds, or it's still a bit crazy, I'll usually have a gel, just to sort of get things into the routine. And it's kind of a good time to get some calories without sort of spiking your sugar or insulin. So I'm going to do that here. And then I'm just going to switch over to the energy drink or Gatorade. I don't usually have a problem with taking gels. So I know a lot of people, will swear by having to follow the same energy plan as you do in your race. And I would say if that was an issue for me, I probably would. But it's usually not a major issue. I can typically get the calories in. I'm coming up on 4 miles here. And it's going okay. No hamstring pain. But like I kind of thought might happen, my calves are feeling the effect at 4 miles already. So I may need to shift my stride around a little bit, just to take some pressure off my calves. Heart rate's about 143, which is pretty typical for 4 miles into a marathon pace. So 5:36 pace seems to be about right, at least from a cardio perspective, at least this early in. We'll see how it goes once we get to the end. But for now, things are kind of going as expected. So I'm at 11 miles now, and things are going pretty well. I've been staying at 5:36 pace. Heart rate's probably averaging around 148. So no complaints. I probably going to finish up and do a half marathon here. Probably in part just as a confidence booster. This last month has been really tough on the morale. So it'd be nice to be able to go through the half and sort of knowing what it's going to feel like. In all truth, and this is probably a little bit too close to marathon day to do it, but I kind of just want to know. So I'm going to do another 2 miles here. All right, finishing up the half marathon. I was 1:13:30. That's definitely more strain on my calves than I've been used to. But I got through half marathon, and I don't know how much longer I could have kept on going, but I definitely could have kept on going. And then obviously on race day, I'll be more rested. I did a pretty easy 12 miles yesterday, and a relatively substantial week. So anyways, that was good for the confidence. Obviously not where I'd like to be in a perfect world, but that's kind of the nature of being a 47-year-old marathoner. Is you got to sort of roll with the punches. So if I could feel like that, or a little bit better being rested on race day, then I think that's a good place to be, and feel confident that I can run in the 228 range. Assuming nothing catastrophic happens, or obviously I have no idea what the conditions are going to be on race day. If there's a big headwind, or if it's 75 degrees, then all bets are off. But for the things I can control, unless something happens between now and then, I'm feeling pretty good about how at least I'm going to start. I think I'll probably evaluate this workout and make some plans about what to go through the half marathon in, and definitely I'll be a little bit more conservative than I thought I might have been 2 months ago when when I was kind of really rolling. But definitely feeling much better than I did 2 weeks ago, where I honestly, I didn't really know what it was going to look like at the start line. So, pretty psyched, all things considered, with the way things went today. All right, now I just got to do my cool down. I think I'll just do a couple miles here. And that'll be a pretty big day. 4 miles up, 13.1 miles. Probably do 2 here, so that's a little over 19 miles on the day. Pretty solid workout. Ideally it's probably a little bit more than I'd like to do 16 days out, but yeah, sometimes you have to just weigh the pros and cons of what I think's best. And I think knowing I can get through the half at a pretty solid pace is a real confidence booster, and I think maybe I needed that more than anything.